Waggeyland, door-to-door doggy daycare, founded and operated by my best friend, JR. I am so proud of his success. Him and his team work so hard. They are so dedicated to the clients, to the dogs, to the business, to everything. This episode was recorded 6 years ago, 2 years after Waggeyland started, so that was a long time ago. I have a new appreciation after re-listening to this episode for everything that he says in it, because I don't think I appreciated the truth in what he was saying. But 6 years later, I talk to him about Waggeyland all the time, and everything that he is saying in this interview is 100% true. He does all of it. And I think I maybe thought he was just trying to give me a good interview at the time. And it's unbelievable listening to it now, because that's the reason why he's successful. Everything that he's saying in this interview is 100% valid, and he does. And I am assuming that's why 6 years later, they're doing really, really well. And I am even more impressed with him as a business owner and as a friend. So wag more, bark less. Waggeyland. Enjoy my conversation with JR. JR Souza is a dear friend of mine and the owner of a doggy daycare business just outside of Boston. I recall discussing the idea of a doggy daycare business sitting around a bonfire in Vermont one weekend a few years ago. We came up with all sorts of names for the potential business that we thought were clever and funny. Of course, as we Googled these names, we realized there were people just as uniquely funny as us, as every name we came up with had been taken. What we did come up with was the name Waggeyland, and JR has taken this simple idea and grown it into a very successful business. He was an executive, an SVP of nursing home and assisted living facilities. He is now CCO, Chief Canine Officer of Waggeyland. So JR, your story is a wonderful example of someone combining their passions with a skill that they transferred from a previous career. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. Translating my skill set. In corporate America, my assignments were taking over businesses that were failing and turning them around. So my skill sets were always to focus on customer experience. What can you do better than your competitor? And what better thing that can anyone do except give that client a phenomenal experience? So I take these operational buildings that were not successful and strictly focus on client experience. Start internally. Give these customers exactly what they want when they want it. So when I started Waggeyland, I used the same formula. I started with one dog and gave that client an experience that they never forgot.
So you started small.
I started small at my home with one dog. And I'll never forget, I was actually Ubering at the time. And I just made up a flyer after that weekend in Vermont. And it was probably like my second customer while I was Ubering. And they were like, oh my God, we were totally looking for a doggy daycare that would do pickup and drop off services. And it all started from there.
So when you started with that one dog, did you know that, was that sort of like a trial period? Let's see if this feels right, if this is going to work. Or did you have a level of confidence that this is what you wanted to do?
Well, I did when you're starting a business, you trial everything. And you throw things out there. They could either be mistakes that turn into successes or failures. It's all about learning from them. And through my research, there was definitely a market for doggy daycare. However, there was no market for a doggy daycare exclusively picking up and dropping dogs off, and all about the client experience. So I started, as I said, with one dog at a time.
So you started with one dog. And I think that is a really important concept, that you have this very successful business and you started really small and you started simple. And so you could test it, pressure test it to see if it's working, what's not working. So you don't really have to start big for something like, starting a new business or a new venture. You can start very simple and small. Would you say that that is something that you would suggest for people?
I would absolutely suggest that for people. Starting small, you grow into your business, you grow into your model, and you really find out what's working and what's not working for the client. So most companies that start off big throw millions of dollars opening up a company, and they have all this overhead. When you start off small, you're dealing with very low overhead and with one customer. And from that one customer, you're going to learn what works and what doesn't work. And then you adjust your model to make it work.
So you essentially created this business from nothing, just an idea, a passion. You certainly had some experience and skills that were transferable. So this is, quite frankly, a creative endeavor, and that you created something new from nothing. Do you think of it in that way?
Now I do. Because every time I look at the success that we are having now, I literally started with one dog in my home in Milton. So, and learned all my mistakes early on. What works, what doesn't work. So now that we have a pack of 40 to 50 dogs a day, and when I look at the pack, I'm like, yes, I started with one dog and added to the pack slowly.
Okay. Do you think of that as a creative exercise, or do you think of it as simply a business exercise?
I think it's a combination of both. Business, you definitely have to be creative. You have to be much more creative than your competitors, but have a business model that will be successful.
Okay. So one of the things that Waggeyland offers that I think is different, I'm not that familiar with this business landscape, but you offer I believe you require pick up and drop off. So you go to the person's home and you pick up the dog. Your facility isn't necessarily set up for customers to come to. The dogs are just there all day, and then you drop them all off. And this all happens via the Waggey Mobile, which is a bus, which I believe we came up with that name that bonfire weekend up in Vermont.
We did.
But one of the advantages of that model, there's a couple things. First of all, it helps you build a relationship with your customers because you have a key to their home, and that makes a big difference. There's a level of trust that's involved. And then also another thing that you do is, I know you do a pup assessment, which you go to the owner's home and you see where the dog is living. You see how they interact with the dog. And that is, again, something else that improves the relationship.
Well, I'm impressed. Thank you for learning all about my business model. But you are correct. It's all about the client experience. So with our model, all dogs are vetted, and they're all vetted through me.
What does that mean?
So it means I visit every dog at their home with all of their owners.
Why do you do that?
First, it establishes a relationship from day one.
Okay.
This is the person who is responsible for your dog. This is the person who's going to come in and pick up your dog every day, who is going to follow up with you on what your dog's needs are.
Does your competitors do that?
None of them, as I know, right now do not.
Okay. And where did you come up with that idea?
Simply, I took that from translating my skills from my nursing home days.
There you go.
We did assessments where we would visit these residents at the hospitals or at their homes. So I took that skill set and said, why not translate that into our doggy pooch assessment? It establishes the relationship. Once I spend 45 minutes with the dog and the family, I know exactly what the dog needs, and I know exactly what the client's going to need. So we set up ourselves for success, meeting that client's expectations right from day one.
Okay. So another thing that is a little different, about Waggeyland, I believe, is that your facility isn't necessarily client facing. I mean, I've been to Waggeyland, so it's quite lovely, but it's not set up for people to come and drop their dogs off and
Absolutely
pick them
not.
up.
We're strictly a 100%. We pick up and drop off the dogs.
So tell me about why you do that.
So the reason why we don't allow drop-offs is that it's about client experience. We control the time that we pick up the dog to the time we drop off the dog, follow-up communication with the families, and it allows us to control our schedule, our business model. So by Sunday, I know what my revenue is going to be. I know how many dogs are going to be there. I know exactly what I have to have in staffing. I know what my expenses are going to be.
So how is the fact that you don't allow people to come and drop their dogs off, how does that lock down the schedule on Sunday more if you didn't do that?
So drop-off for doggy daycare business, drop-off business is very unreliable.
Meaning people just won't show up.
Sure. One day,
Okay.
One day you're sick, you just don't want to drop off your dog.
So how did you know that when you started? Is that something you did initially?
It's something I did personally.
Okay, so you knew from your past habits, I don't want people like me.
Exactly.
I want to make sure that I am more, as the business owner, I want to be more in control. Okay, so that was something that you transferred from your being a customer.
Correct. And it's the same thing as transferring skills from your previous experience. In the nursing home business, assisted living business, you know exactly what your revenue is going to be for the following week because you know how many people are in your building. Mm-hmm. I wanted the same concept where I knew come the beginning of the week, this is going to be my revenue, this is going to be my expenses, and this is how I'm going to control the business, for that week.
Okay.
So with the drop-off revenue, I did start it when I first moved to our location. I did allow drop-off business. It was very intrusive to the dogs, to the pack, and very unreliable.
Meaning the other dogs that were there.
Sure.
Oh, because you would have strangers essentially coming
in. It's a high risk.
Okay, so that's a really good point. So another thing is that you are providing a more stable environment for the dogs because it's basically you and the Waggeyland employees.
Correct.
And there's no strangers coming in.
There's no strangers coming in. Now, people, the location you can view from the outside. It's a glass building.
Yeah.
Which is adorable for the passerbyers. However, it keeps our pack very safe.
Yes.
So we're not introducing other dogs that are not known to the pack. So it's a very controlled environment from the moment the dog enters Waggeyland to the moment the dog is delivered to home. It's a safe environment for the dog. Being a small business owner doesn't mean that you have a product or service and that's it, and you want to sell it. It really encompasses the entire range of a business, from compliance to, again, marketing to AP to customer service to how to sell your product or service.
Did you know this before you started Waggeyland?
I did not.
Okay. So
I was completely naive to that scenario.
Oh, okay. So was that a shock to you?
Thank God I started small and I made all my mistakes within my first year.
So let's talk about that. So you made mistakes and that was discouraging. Did you expect to make mistakes and you knew that you were going to have to just get through them? Let's talk about the mistakes and the experience of making them.
Sure. In your first few years as a small business owner, you're going to make an enormous amount of mistakes. And the whole point is about learning from those mistakes.
Is that hard for you?
It isn't. It isn't hard for me.
So you're used to you're comfortable, as a person, forget about your business.
Sure.
You're comfortable as a person, making mistakes and learning from them. That's just part of your personality?
It is. It is part of my personality. Being an Aquarian, I'm used to saying, I'm sorry, how can I do better?
Okay.
And that is literally the personality and attitude that your business must have. Because you will make mistakes. You will piss off a client. What you don't want to do is not learn from that mistake and do better.
Okay. So then it sounds like when you went into this venture, you weren't afraid of making mistakes. You expected that was going to happen. Were you nervous about anything? Did you have any fears?
I think opening up a business, you do have fears. You're putting in your personal money. You're putting in your goals, your time, your ambition. And you want to succeed. But you have to leave room to make errors. Because through those errors is where you're going to come out with brilliance and creative ways to making your business work.
But were you scared?
I was absolutely terrified.
Okay, so you were terrified.
Totally.
Okay, but you still did it.
I pushed it through.
And why? Why, if you were
And
afraid?
it's 2 years into it, I'm still terrified.
So is that normal for you to be afraid of something and just still do it?
Sure.
So you always do that?
You're always looking to change to better yourself. So if you're not terrified, you're really not, you don't have your thumb on your business.
Would you consider yourself, as you run your business, a creative person?
I do.
Why?
I consider myself extremely creative. From concept to end of day. I'm always thinking of ways of how I can improve. How can I improve my business? How can I improve the brand? How can I improve me? How can I improve myself and my client experience?
And how is that creative?
And it's creative because you come up with solutions. So I'll ask my employees, hey, what can we do better? I'll ask my clients. Or, I'll look at other doggy daycares that I visit, or I'll look at other business models and say, hey, you know what? Johnson & Johnson came up with this great concept. How can that work for us in our industry? Or things like that. I look at a creative way that will fit our model.
Your relationship skills are a big reason for the success of Waggeyland. I would consider that the creative part of your brain, because interacting with people is definitely the creative part of your brain. The fluidity of interacting with people, that's something that you're very, very good at.
And I love.
Yeah. So would you agree that is one of the reasons?
Absolutely. That is where all my creative juices come from. It's from feedback from clients to, making that dog happy. Dropping that dog off at the end of the day and knowing the client's happy. Maintaining long-term relationships, because at Waggeyland we really have no turnaround. So our client base
what does that mean? No
very stable.
Oh, meaning you don't lose customers.
I don't lose customers.
Turnover.
I don't have turnover. I don't have turnover in employees, and I don't have turnover in clients, because we maintain relationships. And we're proactive with issues. So if there is something wrong, because we're not perfect, and I'm not perfect, and our business is not perfect, but the whole thing is about learning from our imperfections. So maintaining a solid relationship, your clients will tell you, hey, you know what? You didn't do so good here in this aspect. And then you adjust so you can do better.
You have all of this experience that you have gained that is very unique, and it's very powerful. It's very impactful. It's changed the way you view the world. Certainly.
And view my relationships.
Okay. So based on that, what can you share with people? One or two things that you think is important for people to know that either they can do, that they could change the way they think, habits that they can incorporate that you have learned that you think that would be helpful. All of this 2 years of being with dogs certainly is going to teach you something that would be applicable to the rest of the universe.
Is really take your time, get to know the person, listen more, don't speak. That person will tell you exactly what they need during your conversation. And follow up. Follow up with the conversation, follow up with the client, follow up with your friend. Follow up, follow up, follow up.
So I would agree with you. I think that the skill of listening is very, very powerful. I think it is very endearing. I think that when someone is a good listener, people detect that and they appreciate it. And I think that people talk a lot, and I don't think they're good listeners. So I am going to 100% agree with you on that.
And that's why during my conversation I said hearing. You can listen, but do you really hear them? And I think that's the difference.
Yep.
you can listen to many people, but do you really hear what they're saying?
Mm-hmm.
And I think once you do that, you open up all these possibilities and you really get to know what that person really needs. And I think that is probably the most valuable lesson I've learned in the last 2
So
years.
that's something new for you. You
Completely
think that you
new.
okay? So
I thought I knew everything before. It's full of crap. Just by shutting up and listening is when I really, really learned.
yeah, I definitely agree with you. And I, on a personal note, I try to be a good listener. Trying to be a good listener is something that I spend a lot of effort on.
You do, and you do. I think you do a great job at that.
Well, thank you. I mean, I definitely try to. I think that it's very easy to look like you're listening, but you're really not.
Right.
You're just nodding your head and you're not really paying attention.
Well, you're listening, but you're not really hearing.
You're not really hearing.
And that's and again, let's rephrase that. Are you really hearing what that person is telling you? Are you hearing about that complaint, or are you just listening? Is this just protocol for you? Are you really hearing that? Are you hearing what your employees are telling you? Are you hearing what the market is saying, what they need? So the second thing I've learned in the last 2 years is maintaining strong relationships. That, I believe, truly is my success, is the ability to hear and the ability to maintain a strong relationship from my clients to my vendors to my employees and really follow up with them and maintaining a relationship.
So, JR, if people want to learn more about Waggeyland, how can they do that?
Please visit us on our website at waggeyland.com. That's Waggey, Waggeyland.com.
JR, thank you so much. This was a great conversation, and I think that we definitely got some information that people listening to this will really appreciate.
Thank you.
My name is Ricky McGuckran, and you have been listening to Eager to Know, the podcast. If you haven't already, please go to Apple Podcasts and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Join me next week for another Eager to Know podcast.